South Florida. My daughter's down in Stewart. She's thinking about coming up. They just let her open up her
Order meeting number 1782 of the Planning and Zoning Commission at 6:30 p.m. We have a quorum. I see that we have 4 regular members. I see that Commissioner Sullivan has just joined us.
Good evening.
Tim, are you there? Not hearing from Tim Moore. Frank, we need another commissioner to sit in for tonight. Is that okay with you?
That's fine with me, Joe.
Okay, thank you. So we have a quorum. All righty. Next up under legal notice, there was none. Just something I want to, just a point of a clarification. I was looking at the information posted on tonight's, on the East Windsor Planning and Zoning website. It's inconsistent with some of the information on here. Let me give you an example. The agenda is fine. All the items are posted, but there's information out there regarding LeBrec Motorcraft application. So that's out on the website, but we're not talking about that tonight. I'm sure there's a story behind it. We'll get to that later. So that's not something on tonight's agenda.
All right, needs to be cleaned up. Yep.
Excuse me, Joe.
Yes.
Peg, I was going to ask you to put LeBrec back. I think it got dropped off when we did our last revision. I don't know. I saw Eric here, so he probably wants to chat. Could we put it, this is not really a special meeting, so could we add that back under new business? Or do you choose not to?
No. Since it's not on the agenda, could I have a motion to add back in the LeBrec Motorcraft application?
Thank you. Maybe.
Yeah. Will this be to continue the application?
Yes, it'd be continue the application, and we'll have this discussion in its usual spot, or typical spot under roll business, item number 11.
Thank you.
Okay. I make a motion that to continue the application of LeBrec Autocraft, the site plan review for construction of a new commercial building for automotive repair at 65 Newberry Road.
There's a motion to add one item to the agenda. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none. If you're in favor, raise your hand. I see 5. That's a quorum. That's approved. All right. Next up, under added agenda items, there was one. Site plan modification for the applicant, the Silverman Group at 12 South Main Street for increase of 62,000 square feet. This is in the B1 and M1 zoning districts. And we'll be talking about that a little later on. We're accepting the application in a few minutes. Next up is the public participation portion of our meeting. Are there any comments from the public for something that's not already on tonight's agenda? If you're trying to speak, you might be on mute. Okay. I see that there is none. Next up, approval of minutes, May 26, 2020. Any member of the commission have any comments, changes, edits, anything to be discussed?
I was fine with the minutes.
This is Frank. I read them and they were fine for me.
If there are no changes, I'll entertain a motion for approval.
I make a motion to approve the minutes of the May 26, 2020 regular meeting. Regular meeting 1718, but do we have to mention that this was a Zoom teleconference?
I don't think it's necessary.
Okay. And I make a motion to approve the minutes of the regular meeting 1718 held on May 26, 2020.
There's a motion on the table for approval. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, I call for a vote. If you're in favor, please raise your hand. I count 5 hands. It's approved. Next up on the receipt of applications, there were 2. Broadbrook Meadows re-subdivision. The applicant is Winbrook Homes LLC. It's a 15-lot residential subdivision. Property is located at 131 Depot Street, the corner of Depot Street and East Road. And number 2 is a site plan modification for 62,000 square foot increase. The applicant is the Silverman Group. The property is located at 12 South Main Street. And this is in the B1 and M1 zoning districts. Moving right along to old business, the application for LeBrec Motorcraft, one we added to the agenda tonight. Eric, you're up.
Thank you. For those who weren't with us about a month ago, my name is Eric Peterson. I'm an engineer with Gardner & Peterson Associates from Holland, and I'm representing the applicant Mike LeBrec from LeBrec Autocraft. So we had a pretty good discussion about this application on May 12th. And since that meeting, a few things have happened with this application, all positive. We have submitted some revised plans that addressed all the comments from Len Norton, and he has responded in a memo saying that he's satisfied with all of our revisions. At the request of the Planning and Zoning Commission, we submitted an exterior illumination plan showing the foot candles of the proposed lighting, exterior lighting that we're proposing on the new building. For those of you who weren't here when I was here last, sorry, we are proposing to construct a new 9,600 square foot building to expand the automotive repair service at 63 Newberry Road, which is a 2.5 acre parcel in the M1 manufacturing zone. Continuing on, if you guys have a copy of the lighting plan, it shows that the lighting is not very bright. It's really just for security purposes, and it's illuminating the area in between the existing building and the new building and the parking lot out front. There's also a existing light on the CLMP pole out by the street, which also illuminates the front of the parking lot, which we will not be changing. Unfortunately, we could not model that because we don't know the specs on it, but the lighting that we're proposing is pretty dim, and it shouldn't affect the coverage anywhere near the street, actually. In the areas to the back and the areas to the east of the proposed building, we have no lights on whatsoever at all. So we have no exterior lighting spilling onto neighboring properties or anything like that. We also added a dumpster location and a detail of a dumpster pad at the request of the Planning and Zoning Commission. That's located near the back of the site behind the existing building. We cited that location so it'd be easy for a vehicle to come in and empty the dumpster, make their maneuver, and turn around and come back out of the site. We are not proposing any screening around that structure because the vegetation to the north, which is behind the site, and to the east and to the west, very thick. And I don't think anyone's going to see that dumpster location. The two buildings, and there's going to be a fence in between the two buildings, kind of near the front of the proposed building, will screen the location of the dumpster from the street. We also had a discussion about their waste oil last time we spoke. So I had a conversation with the applicant about what he does with his waste oil. And he has a company that he hires to haul all of his waste oil off-site and dispose of properly. That process is more or less audited by the state, in which he has to provide information about how much oil that he purchases, how much oil that he uses, and how much oil that he disposes of, so that, you know, those numbers can be crunched and, you know, they're going to be proven that he's not illegally disposing of any of his waste oil. And he's going to continue doing that same operation, and he's actually obligated to go through that process. So finally, last week, received approval from the from the Inland Wetland Commission. They had one minor stipulation from the plans that we have presented, and that is to add a maintenance schedule for the rain garden, which we would do hopefully if we receive approval tonight with the final plans. If you have any questions, I'll go ahead and answer them if I can. Thank you.
Eric, one thing I will know is I do not believe that the commission was provided a draft motion for approval with the appropriate conditions. So we're not in any position tonight to vote on the application. It doesn't seem like staff was prepared to have it ready for us at this meeting.
Okay, I was unaware of that. Okay.
Ruben, am I mischaracterizing anything that might have happened?
No, I didn't know that this was going to be in the agenda. I was out of the office when you guys heard the application, so I wasn't prepared to have the document you're talking about.
Well, that being said, we can certainly continue conversation and discussion. Why don't we go around and query commissioners to see if there's any other issues or if their comments have been addressed. Mike, do you have any additional comments or concerns for Eric?
No, I pulled up my packet from the previous one, and all the notes that I made, he has addressed at this point. So I don't have any further questions right now.
Okay, thank you. Jim?
No, sir, I am good. Thank you.
Frank, anything from you?
No, I don't see anything that I can take any fault with. No concern.
Commissioner Sullivan? Dick?
No, I have no problem with it at all. He's been a good addition to the town.
Okay. Ann?
I have no issues with it. Thank you.
Okay. And finally, Marty, anything?
All is well with me.
Okay. Ruben, do you think this is something that you and staff will be an opportunity for our next scheduled meeting to draft conditions of approval? And
Absolutely.
We can just take, okay.
Yep.
So this should be very elementary the next time we meet.
Yep. We'll have it.
Okay. Thank you very much. Eric, I also don't have any concerns. I think you addressed all our concerns, and I think we should be good to go. It's just the timing, and staff has been out of the office in extraordinary conditions.
Yeah, I understand. Yep.
Yep. Okay. We're sorry about that.
Okay. Yeah. I'll just I won't have a presentation or anything for next time, but I'll sit in, and if any questions pop up with any of the members of the commission, I'll be here to answer them, I guess.
Okay. Thank you very much for understanding. So with that, I'll entertain a motion to continue the application for LeBrec Motorcraft until our next meeting, which is, I don't have a calendar handy.
23rd, Joe, June 23rd.
Thank you very much.
I'll make a motion to continue the application of LeBrec Autocraft for the site plan review for construction of a new commercial building for automotive repair at 63 Newberry Road.
There's a motion on the table to continue the application for LeBrec Motorcraft. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? We'll have a hand vote. Those in favor, raise your hand. I count 5. We're good. Thank you.
Excuse me, Joe,
Thank you.
may I add the meeting date to the motion?
Sure.
Okay.
Yes. Okay, next up is Terry Hahn on the line.
Oh, no, Terry had a family situation, so she's on her way. I emailed
Okay.
you. Yep.
Okay, I guess I didn't get that in time. I apologize. All right, so we won't talking about item C under old business. We're moving right along.
Is Timmy here now? Is Tim on?
Tim, are you here? I don't think so. I don't see a local number on the screen.
Okay.
Next up, under other business, an informal discussion presentation by Desiree. I don't. Hopefully, I'm pronouncing that correctly. Where it's just an acronym, LLC, for a gravel pit solar. Properties ranging on Apothecaries Hall Road to Norcap, and the Markowski property, and on Plantation Road. This is a solar energy development that Jason has been alluding to for some time now. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. I think we sent around a brief slide deck. I don't know if folks have access to that or if I could share my screen here.
Aaron, do you want to run the slideshow or do you want me to?
I'm happy to do that. Let me see if I can share my screen. Oh.
Aaron, would you just mind introducing your team for the rest of us?
Not at all. Absolutely. So I'm Aaron Svedlow. I'm the Director of Development with D.E. Shaw Renewable Investments and Northlight Energy, who's proposing the gravel pit solar project. And we have a number of our team members on the call this evening. We have Aileen Kenny, who runs our permitting and has a lot of experience permitting large energy projects throughout New England. We also have John Gravel, no relation to gravel pit solar. John's on the call, and he works on the development and permitting side as well. And then we have Sue Moberg from VHB, and she is our lead consultant on the project. Sue's got a long history permitting, designing solar projects in particular in
Thank you.
Absolutely. So thank you guys for having us this evening. We just wanted to kind of walk you through the project. You know, this is maybe a little bit of an atypical type of project for East Windsor and Connecticut in general, because it is a siting council process. It's a certificate process with the siting council. So one of the first steps in that process is submitting a draft application to the town for review, which we did on May 22nd. So we thought we would take the opportunity today to kind of walk you through the project and really primarily just make ourselves available for any questions you might have. So if I can get the presentation running, I would be happy to go through that.
I see some slides. That's a good sign.
That's a good sign. Excellent. Okay. Folks can see my screen here.
Yes.
Excellent. Okay. Thank you. We will dive right in. All right. So just briefly an overview of the project. This is a 120 megawatt project as proposed, and that's enough to large enough to produce power for about 12,000 typical homes. As you mentioned earlier, we're on a number of different parcels. About 60% of the project site is active gravel and sand pits. Of those gross parcels, of the gross acreage in those parcels, we're using about 485 acres of the 726 gross acres. This will result in permanent closure of the gravel pits, the gravel mines in these areas. And as I think folks may generally be aware, we will be providing significant economic benefits to the town from tax payments and some additional economic development type payments. This is pretty basic construction, though we're not talking about, you know, building structures in a meaningful way. We're going to drive some piles. We're going to put in some pretty basic roads, and we're going to install some electrical equipment. So pretty light construction equipment. There will be some grading, obviously, in the gravel pits to get them back to something that's usable. But other than that, pretty limited activity. Once constructed, we're a quiet neighbor. Couple of visits a week, some mowing, some light maintenance, and really that's about it. Okay. So this map here just shows you the general properties where the project is proposed on. So this is the existing Apothecaries Hall gravel mine here. This is the Northern Capital gravel mine here. These are some additional properties, privately owned properties that we'll be leasing or purchasing. You can see here the Connecticut DOT-owned railway passes through the middle of the site, and it's a little bit more faint here. Let me see if I can zoom in, or possibly on the next slide. There is, you can see the existing Eversource transmission line goes through the project. So when we're looking at properties that we think would be suitable for solar energy development, we try to focus on properties that have compatible land uses. So gravel mining activity certainly is compatible, as well as compatible adjacent land uses, such as a landfill, which we have here, some additional gravel mines, and some smaller scale solar projects as well. But most importantly is the presence of existing electrical infrastructure. So the location of that existing 115 kV Eversource line across the property really makes this a good site for solar. In addition to all those sort of physical constraints, we also think about just proximity to residential development. Is this going to be visible? Is this going to be sort of an impact on the community? And I think if folks are familiar with these properties, generally speaking, they're very well hidden from public rights of way. And in those areas where they're not, such as Plantation Street, we will be implementing some visual screening in those areas. But more about that in a minute. I'm just talking a little bit about design, and then I'll pause for some questions before I continue. The project will consist of a mix of single axis trackers. So these are solar panel racking systems that follow the sun. They're oriented in a north-south direction, and they move during the day from east to west to maximize production. Those will be deployed primarily in the central portion of the southern array. And the rest of the project will be the more traditional fixed racking that I think folks are familiar with seeing, where the rows are oriented east-west. Okay. The other sort of innovative and interesting thing that we're doing with this project is we're approaching stormwater in a creative way. You know, it's important for us to minimize the amount of ground we disturb because we just have to go back and restore it anyway. This is a unique site because of the presence of the gravel pits. So we'll be using a mix of what we consider designed features, so stormwater basins and traps, and existing topography elements. So there's some ravines, there's some existing natural basins that we'll be improving to handle stormwater. And this allows us to treat stormwater appropriately, but also minimize the amount of grading and land impact that we have to do. The other thing we're doing is we've located our inverters centrally within the middle of the project, as well as our substation area and switch yard. Those pieces of electrical infrastructure are a little bit larger, can be more of a visual impact on the community. So we've put them in the middle of the project so that they will largely not be visible to the public. And then last but not least is just the underground collector system. For the majority of the project site, the collector lines will be underground. So I'll pause there. I know that was a lot of information. Folks probably have some questions. So before I proceed, why don't I just stop there.
Does anyone have any questions for Aaron or the team at this point for information he's already presented?
Yes, I have one. You're using roughly, 65% of the land. What do you intend to do with the other portion of the land that you're purchasing?
So yeah, right now our intention is to leave it, in its natural state. I know that there are some security concerns on the property, these southern properties in particular, with the presence of some ATV users that maybe not supposed to be there. So we have talked a little bit about how we could improve security on those properties. But as of now, we don't have any plans for them other than to leave them in a fallow state.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question. Are you guys going to fence all the fields, solar fields?
Yes, yeah, the project itself has to be fenced for code purposes. We have some flexibility on what kind of fence we can use. But yes, the project area will absolutely be fenced.
And can you show me on that map exactly where you guys are going to put those fields at? Is it every block or is it the whole blue area?
Yes, yeah. So the blue areas are the panel array areas. And then the yellow are the yellow lines are the roads. The red or orange rectangles are the inverter locations. And then to the north, you see a couple white boxes. That's the switch gear for the interconnection piece.
Well, that's pretty big. That's huge.
It's a large project. Yep. There's no, beating around the bush. It's a larger scale project. But it's a unique site, as I said. I mean, it's not particularly visible, and it also, gives the town a great source of revenue, and it's an opportunity to have these sort of gravel mines closed out, which, as I understand it, have been a bit of a nuisance to the town.
Where is the existing solar field that's out there now? I know there's a couple of them out there.
Yeah, those are on the NorCap property. I don't know. Can folks see my cursor when I move it?
I can see it.
Yes.
Okay. So these are the existing solar fields here, right?
Okay.
So those are the solar fields. This is the Northern Capital landfill right here, and it goes across the railroad in this area. This is Northern Capital's gravel pit, gravel sand mine, basically. And then this is the Apothecary's Hall gravel mine in this area. So we're going to use the existing entrance to that, as well as some of the existing entrances off of Plantation Road to the south.
And Plantation Road is just one, that's just a flat field over there.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
That's all I have.
Thank you.
Any other members of the commission have any questions for Aaron or the team?
Joe
Yeah.
and I think it's a really interesting project, and I'd be really happy to see large-scale solar come to East Windsor. I think it's the cleanest energy we could get, and we're all energy consumers, so I see it as a real positive. When I think of that large area of land, instead of active gravel pit, this would be I'll say, a cover that would not have the dust problems and the complaints from noise. But I'm wondering if there's any way to have any public access in parts that aren't, and I don't mean ATV type access and that kind of thing. I mean like walking trail.
And are you trying to encourage that or discourage that?
Yeah, I'm asking it for the developer it's something that would fit with this project or would not fit with this project.
Yeah, so it's an interesting question. So we've developed 2 other solar projects in Connecticut, both commercial scale projects. And in the most recent one in Simsbury, this exact question was asked. And ultimately we have allowed public access to the areas of the property outside the fence. What came up during the siting council process, which was kind of interesting, was we had actually put it in our plans. We said we're gonna allow public access to these areas, the woods primarily, where there was already some trails. But what happened was the siting council asked us to remove that from the application. They didn't want to be responsible for permitting that for whatever reason. So I guess where I'm going with that is it is certainly something that we are more than happy to consider for those areas in the woods in particular, pedestrian access, even some mountain biking, something like that. We're happy to consider it. But I think it would probably need to be sort of defined outside the scope of our permitting process, if that makes sense. It's just something we're a little bit sensitive to. So that was a long answer to your question, but basically we're more than happy to consider that, absolutely.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions for Aaron before he continues with this presentation?
I have one. Aaron, so am I to understand, is all gravel operation going to cease in this area, or are they going to continue to mine in areas that are not covered under your solar project?
So we'll be acquiring the northern gravel pit prior to going into construction. There will be no additional gravel mining on that property after we start construction there. We'll be leasing the other gravel operation. Similarly, after we go into construction, there will be no additional mining on those properties.
Can I ask one more associated question? This is Ann. I believe one of the gravel pits is not just a gravel pit, it is a volume reduction facility, and there's quite a bit of waste stored there. Is that going to get cleaned up?
There is some debris. There's a certain amount of debris in the northern pit. So we are working through that with the current owner of the property. Yeah, there's been some fill brought in that's, let's just say, suboptimal.
I have one more question. Are you at liberty to say how long your lease is for?
That was also my question.
Yeah, I can talk to sort of the longevity of the project, because that's really kind of the more relevant number here. These projects really are around for a minimum of 25 years, 20 to 25 years. When we build a project, that is the minimum lifespan that we're building it for. It's possible the project could last longer, 30 plus years. It's hard for us to say at this time, but we do project, potentially out that far. So we have a decommissioning plan, and that needs to be approved by the siting council. And I think a draft of that was provided to the town as well, that makes provisions for removing the facility at the end of its useful life.
But you've bought the land, or you're just leasing the land?
It's a mix. It's a mix depending on the parcel. Yeah. Some of the properties we have a lease on, some of them we're purchasing.
Aaron, I have a question regarding the siting council approval process. Is that in perpetuity, or does that have a lifetime? How long does that good for?
That's actually a really good question that I'm going to defer to Sue or Aileen if either of you guys have an answer for that. And if we don't have an answer, we'll get back to you. I don't know, Sue or Aileen, do you want to speak to that? Yeah, I guess not.
Oh, no, sorry. Hi, Aaron.
I,
Aaron, why
go
don't,
ahead.
oh, sorry, this is Aileen Kenny. I think it's best if we get an answer from Lee Hoffman, who was our attorney. But, you know, I think when we go through the process, we do plan for a certain lifetime for the project, like Aaron said, 20 to 25 years for the siting council. So we'll let them know that we have a decommissioning plan. I think the specific question of whether or not that timeframe could be extended, whether siting council approval would be required for that timeframe to be extended, I think we'll have to defer to council on that. But as Aaron mentioned, we need to plan for the end of the project during the permitting phase. But we'll get you a sharper answer on that.
Thank you.
And back to your question about the duration of the leases, none of our leases exceed, I believe, 40 years. So just to have a bookend there, but we'll get back to you.
So if the solar panels have a 25-year lease and it's a cost-effective project now, wouldn't the cost of solar only be lower 25 years out, and it might be viable to replace the panels?
It might be viable to replace the panels. It may be viable to keep running the project. The panels are guaranteed to degrade at a certain percentage every year, but they could keep running. I hope to be retired by that point, so I'll let other people make those decisions while I'm sitting on a beach somewhere or fishing. But you bring up a good point. Yeah, it's an interesting thing. We're not seeing a lot of what we call resurfacing in the industry yet, even for projects that have been around for a long time. It's kind of, you know, like your house or any large investment. You make that initial investment, you want to keep that in production. You want to keep it operating and in good shape for as long as possible.
So I guess what I'm saying is it doesn't necessarily revert to a gravel pit in 25 years.
Oh, no, correct. Yeah, correct.
You
Yeah.
put in the infrastructure for power. It seems to me a lot of that could be reutilized, even if the panels are starting to degrade.
Yeah, I can't speak to the future of these properties, but I would be very surprised if they were ever reverted to gravel mining operations again. I can say that almost certainly those areas that are, you know, agriculture would be more than suitable and probably in a much better condition at the end of this project for agricultural purposes than they are now. The farmers take good care of their fields, but leaving a field fallow for 20 plus years with a good cover crop on it is going to do wonders for those soils.
Aaron, I notice you have a couple more slides. You want to try to get through those, and we'll ask the rest of everyone else to hold their questions, and we'll catch up with those who haven't had an opportunity to ask any first.
Perfect. Thank you, Joe. Okay. Appreciate that. This is just an image of our project in Simsbury under construction. Kind of gives you a flavor for what we're looking at here potentially. A few points just on the environmental review process, and we've talked about this a little bit. The State Siting Council will conduct a full public process. So there's a couple opportunities, formal required opportunities that the Siting Council will run for the public to be involved with. There'll be a public hearing and a few other things. In addition to that, Gravel Pit Solar and DESRI will be offering, you know, a lot of opportunities for the public to engage with us directly. At some point in the near future, we're working on it now. We are developing a virtual open house website where folks can come visit it, learn about the project, submit comments that'll come directly to myself and the rest of the project team that we can respond to. So we should have that up and running. It's a more of a interactive sort of website that folks can use. We'll also have a more traditional website. And if any folks have questions they can reach out directly to us. So that's kind of a voluntary effort that we're doing to make sure people know about the project and can get their questions answered. But back to sort of the procedural statutory process with the siting council, there will be hearing. We've already submitted the draft application to the town. We will only be able to proceed if we can demonstrate that we meet state environmental standards. So this is to the siting council, but this is also to Connecticut Department of Energy and Environmental Protection for a stormwater permit. So it's a high bar that's set for these projects. We have a lot of experience going through that process. We've also done a lot of environmental studies. I'll spare you the details, but all that's in the application, and I'm happy to answer questions about it. But wildlife, wetlands, water courses, cultural resources, air, noise, you name it, visual impacts. So we're going above and beyond to avoid impacts to cultural and natural resources. We won't have any direct wetland impacts. We think this is going to be a well-sited and well-constructed project. So finally, I touched on all this, but again, we will be a large taxpayer in town. I don't know if we'll be the largest, but certainly one of the top taxpayers in town. Significant new economic development, really no additional town services. We don't have any little solar panels going to school. We aren't required, to have sewer or water, none of those facilities. We will do some trainings with the local fire department to make sure they're up to speed on how to handle our facility. But these types of projects tend to be a net positive for the town and really not require many services. We talked a little bit about the low impact nature of the project, improvement to agricultural soil quality, closure of the mines, and I know this has been an issue, but increased security on those properties. So I'll just leave our schedule up here and pause for questions. Just very briefly, this schedule is high level, sort of conceptual. A lot of this will be dictated by how quickly we move through the Connecticut Siting Council process. But we would anticipate starting some civil construction work, so some roads, some seeding of areas to stabilize them as soon as next summer, late summer, fall period.
Dick, you didn't have a chance to comment. Do you have anything to add or any questions for Aaron or his team?
No, I did have one question off the bat, and he did answer it.
Okay.
I don't have anything new other than maybe perhaps is this schedule the best of all possible worlds, or does it take into account delays along the way?
This is our optimistic schedule, I'd say. There's a little bit of float in there. We are looking to be delivering power by the end of 2022. These things are a lot easier to build if you can kind of spread it out a little bit. We do anticipate doing most of the work in a condensed construction season in 22, but if we can do some civil in 21, it'll make things a lot cleaner and easier in 22.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Marty, I didn't hear from you. You have any comments or questions?
I do have a question. Aaron, on your vegetation and how do you keep out the bittersweet and the Russian olive, and I mean, is this a heavy use of 2,4-D or Roundup, or how does that, when you were talking about water studies and impacts to the environment, I'm just curious of what you do for that.
Yeah, it's a good question. And man, that bittersweet is a real pain in the butt. I removed a lot of it from my yard this spring. So we do a few different things. Let me talk a little bit just about the general vegetation on these project sites. The reason why we want to come in fall of 21 is we want to establish a seed bed that will be our permanent seed bed on the project site. So we plant a mix of grasses, that are native, generally native to the region, certainly non-invasive, that provide the soil stability for erosion control purposes, don't need to be mowed excessively because they kind of just grow up and flop over. So that's the majority of the area under the arrays. There'll be some discrete areas on the margins that'll be planted as pollinator habitat. And then in some areas where we're doing some landscaping to limit visual impacts, we'll be using largely native trees and shrubs in those areas. In terms of keeping down the invasives, there's a couple techniques, really the mechanical treatment of the property. So the mowing that we do periodically helps keep out some of those species like multiflora rose or some of these other invasive species. So we do not plan to, and I don't believe we do anywhere on our projects, use any chemical treatments to keep out invasives, but we will be evaluating our vegetation management plan periodically for the life of the project.
Okay, thank you. I just was curious because I'd like to know your secrets, because between Japanese knotweed and bittersweet, I'm pulling my hair out.
Aaron, we invited the Inland Wetlands and Watercourse Agency to listen in. And Rebecca, are you out there?
I am here.
Yeah, do you have any comments or questions you would like to ask or anything?
Nope, I think one of my questions was answered by Marty in terms of like the grass and how you kind of control the weeds and everything. Because there's the catch brook that runs through there, and there's some pretty heavy wetted areas over there too. So, I mean, you're not disturbing them in any way. So yeah, I don't have anything. This has been a great presentation.
Thank you. Does anyone else have any questions for Aaron or comments?
This is Frank. A great presentation. I think it's a wonderful project.
Frank, excuse me, Aaron. My name is Kurt Kepschel, and I'm on the Inland Wetlands Commission. And I'm just thinking of, I don't think you have any problem selling this to the town of East Windsor. A couple of things that might help sell it is the economy of the power. How much cheaper is it to produce power this way as opposed to a gas-fired power plant?
Sure. Yeah, really good question. That's one of the main reasons why we're doing this project, is because we're on average quite a bit cheaper than natural gas. So the analogy that I use is, this is a power contract, a power project that produces energy that doesn't have any fuel costs, right? So we can have the same price for the life of our project. So the analogy I use is, do you want to have the fixed rate mortgage for your house or a variable rate mortgage? Typically you want to have that fixed rate mortgage. So you're paying the same price every year. It's a consistent price for the life of the project, just like for your mortgage. Natural gas, it may be cheaper today, but it's not going to be cheaper in the end of July when everybody's got their air conditioners on and there's a constraint on the supply of natural gas. That price is going to spike through the roof. So on average, our energy prices are below market rate. And it was interesting when PURA, the Public Utilities Regulatory Authority in Connecticut, approved the power contracts for this project. They enumerated the sort of massive savings that our projects would have for ratepayers over the long term. And the way we can get those low energy prices, because solar the prices come down a lot, but it's still it's still expensive to build projects. The way we do that is by building projects at scale. We get that economy of scale of a large project. So by building a 120 megawatt project, we can produce some of the lowest cost energy in New England for the longest period of time.
And one last question, and it sounds kind of selfish, But if there's a massive power outage in the state of Connecticut, can this power be dedicated to the town of East Windsor?
How far is your house from the project? Because we can run an extension cord potentially. No, unfortunately, it goes into the grid. You would need to have a behind the meter project, probably on town property somewhere, to be able to have those capabilities. And even then, it's tough because energy grids need the kind of the pump primed, so that black start capabilities are difficult. For grids, you might be able to run a building or two, but to have a whole community off the grid and then power up on a solar project would be tough. But swing by with your cell phone, we'll charge it for you.
Oh, well, thank you for answering my questions, and nice presentation.
Does anyone else in planning and zoning or in the Wetlands Watercourse Agency have any questions?
Yes, if I may.
Comment. Oh, go ahead, Mike.
Okay. Aaron, so based on your schedule here, it looks like you're really not going to be on site until, at best, a year from now. Is the mining operations going to continue until you begin your civil construction, or once you've signed your lease agreements, the activities are going to stop there?
No, they're going to continue. We wish it was a little bit different, but they'll continue until we take control of the properties.
Okay, because my concern is that their permits usually renew on an annual basis, so it's highly likely that a permit may have to come up before us prior to the start of your construction. And I don't know if that's going to complicate things for us to renew a permit for something that you don't plan to continue.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. I mean, we're very confident that this project, will proceed. But we do have a long road ahead of us, right? We have a lengthy permitting process with the state. Anything could happen between now and, next year. So we always tell our landowners, in our host communities, to operate under the assumption that, it's possible that this could not be successful. So I can't go to the folks operating the gravel pits and say, hey, look, we're definitely going to start construction next fall. Plan to pack up and don't renew your permits. We believe that that's the case, but at the same time, anything could happen. So point taken. I would just say for those businesses that are still operating the gravel pits, I think they'd like to continue until we take control, and we'll be very communicative with them and with you about when we plan to have that transition, so that everybody can be planning ahead.
Okay, so I'm just thinking that depending on how you have your lease agreements written, you may need to be a co-applicant on the next permit.
We could definitely talk about that. Yeah, I'm not sure. We'd probably have to get our legal guys to run up some more hours checking that out for us. But we're happy to look into it. Yep.
Okay. All right, that's all I had. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else? Any comments?
Yes. Being a lifelong resident of this town, we've had problems with dirt bikes in this area, and this will 90% take out all the dirt bike trails with no doubt, which was what we want anyways. So that will also stop all the dirt and dust going from Apothecary Hall Road, I'm sure. So I just want to let the rest of the commission know that it will solve two problems once. It's definitely going to take out all the dirt bike trails, which is good.
Thanks, Jim.
Yeah, that may be another point if you're considering walking trails. If people can walk, bikes can get in there. So it may be better to keep the place off-site for a while.
Good feedback.
Last call for comments. Questions for Aaron?
Joe, if this is Jason, if I could just chime in.
Sure can.
I just want to share with the commission how great Aaron and his team have been to work with as we've come to an arrangement on what the town's relationship is going to be here. This, to Jim's point, and I think others made this as well, this checks a lot of boxes. You know, it's great economic development at no service impact to the town. It solves an attractive nuisance that's plagued us for decades. And it's green renewable energy. This is a win on 3 different fronts, and the folks at DESRI could not have been more helpful and open in terms of getting to where we are now. And I'm looking forward to that relationship continuing as we move forward. So I just want to thank them for that.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jason.
So Aaron,
Joe,
I also, go ahead.
Sorry, one quick question. Is this going to require a public hearing?
Not on our part, it isn't.
Okay. I was just thinking, you know, whenever we've had our renewals, there's been, you know, certain individuals that were very vocal about the dust issues. I'd wonder if they would have similar issues with screening requirements. So I was just kind of thinking in that area, when we start doing a screening plan, which areas to consider.
That would probably be part of the siting council approval process outside of our jurisdiction.
Yeah, that said, if you have contact information for those folks that have been particularly, you know, engaged in community issues over in that part of town, please pass them along. We'd love to reach out and, you know, run our plans by them and chat with them.
Well, Aaron, I really thank you for providing an overview to this commission as well as the Inland Wetlands Watercourse Agency. And I'm very impressed with your professionalism, your honesty. It looks like a terrific project. And I just can't wait for us to, all of us, to reap the benefits of this initiative for East Windsor moving us forward. So I want to thank you and everyone else participating tonight. Thanks again.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We appreciate it. We look forward to a successful project. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Goodbye now.
Bye. Okay, we're moving along to other business. Item B, informal discussion regarding 55 Winkler Road. The owner, Karam, and I will not try to pronounce it. I will not do a good job. He's the owner, president, MAS Transport Incorporated. It's a discussion to include permitted uses for parking of general freight trucks and potential future construction of an auto body shop. It's in the MFDD zone. Is there someone here that would like to talk about this one? Is Karam available or a representative?
Hey, Joe?
Yes.
Yeah. He had sent a letter previous to your last meeting, and I don't think he planned on being at the meeting. He wanted the board to just discuss what was in his letter, the types of business he was going to use there and what have you. When I sent them an email, somebody should really, represent them, because it's hard. I mean, if you questions, there's nobody to answer his questions.
Yeah, I would think an informal discussion is a two-way conversation. We're having a one-way conversation, which doesn't really work well. So I think that if this person really wants to get some feedback from the commission, really should make an effort to participate in a conversation with the commission.
That would be my opinion. I know the letter said that he I think he stores, I don't even remember, I don't have a copy of it in front of me at the moment, but he stores like track trailers or something there, and I think he really needs to make an effort to zoom into the board and really explain. I don't think the letter explained what he wanted to do, but I don't know who you're going to get to answer any questions.
Yeah, I recall we had a very brief conversation regarding this. I questioned whether or not the existing land use approvals were still valid for this piece of property, which was for another use. So we didn't even know what the appropriate zone was for this property. There's a lot of underlying questions that we had. And quite honestly, I don't want to take anyone's valuable time talking about this if this person isn't even here to ask questions of. Does any member of the commission feel differently? Is there a different opinion?
No.
No, not at all. This is going to require a zone change to begin with.
Yeah, I think it's not worth wasting our time unless, if you're really concerned, you should be here.
Hey, Peg, do you have the, I think it was the Realtor that was involved. Maybe you could have her contact information, or whoever's contact information. You could send them a note and say that it would be really beneficial to have someone here to represent them.
I can do that, Lynn. They were both the Realtor and this gentleman were sent agendas, told when the Zoom meeting would be occurring, and obviously the Realtor was excited about all of that. I can certainly follow up with them again, not a problem. And I will send a copy of that letter to all of you commissioners. How's that?
And I believe I sent the Realtor an email.
You did.
Last meeting when nobody was, when nobody was represented here, and there was some confusion that we thought someone would be at the meeting, and I think I recommended again that it would be beneficial for either the Realtor or the client to respond to questions, because it's a one-way conversation otherwise.
You were very clear about that, Lynn, and the Realtor, as I said, was excited about the opportunity. I do not see her in the meeting. So,
well, with that, why don't we will no longer have this on the agenda unless there's a commitment from the Realtor and or the property owner or interested people to discuss this. So
okay.
this is just continue to be a waste of time. So if they'll make a commitment, I'll certainly entertain keeping it, having a discussion on the agenda.
Sounds great. And I will follow up with it tomorrow. Is that okay? And give you guys a follow-up?
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Next up, informal discussion regarding 14B Rice Road. This is potential for a special use permit / rear lot for a single family home. Information suggests it's a little over 8 acres, but 152 feet of frontage. And some of the interested parties, maybe David Mosier and a Mr. Ronald Hunt. Is anyone here like to talk about this one?
Yes, hi.
Hello, yes.
Hi, how are you? Thank you so much for having me today.
You're welcome. Can you just identify yourself for the record, please?
Sure, my name's David Mosier. I live at 39 Main Street in Broadbrook, and I also own the property that we'll be discussing tonight.
Okay. Do you have any more additional information to share other than what I just read off regarding, we just have very little information regarding what your ideas are, what your intentions are.
Sure. So Mr. Ronald Hunt is also on the call tonight, and he would like to purchase this land to build a home on. And originally, because it's short on the frontage because it's zoned A1, I was going to purchase the required frontage from the neighbor, and went through the whole process with Russo, got the Mylar put together, and but unfortunately, the mortgage company is not getting back to the seller for the frontage. So we're kind of disappointed because it's been almost 9 months of trying to obtain this frontage, and we're just finding out now that the mortgage company is not returning phone calls or being cooperative. So we're trying to go down the road of the special use permit. Russo has been out to start to develop a site plan for the area, and he's been working with Mr. Hunt on this plan. Tomorrow Russo's going to be going out to dig some auger test pits, I guess is the correct term, to determine, to make sure that there's no wetlands and everything. I guess he's pretty confident that that there probably shouldn't be where the house would like to go. But obviously, Mr. Hunt doesn't want to purchase the property unless he knows he could build a house on it. So we're just trying to go through the steps to make sure that we kind of touch all our bases to make sure that we could move forward if possible.
So let me ask this question. If in fact you were to be able to acquire property from a neighbor, are you suggesting this whole special use process is really unnecessary? You could build the house as of right and totally avoid this administrative process?
Yes, that's my understanding.
That's what was represented to us, yes.
Yeah, and I've worked. I had a conversation with both Ruben and Mr. Bauza and Ronald as well about a week or so ago to kind of figure out what was the best option was. But yeah, it's after working so closely with Russo's for several months to try to get this frontage, to kind of get it held up because of the mortgage company not being willing to call us back is frustrating, to say the least.
Yeah, I agree. Anyone else have any comments for Mr. Mosier or the potential buyer, or any questions?
I do. David, is it the property next to the Arts property?
Yes, it is, exactly.
That's correct.
Okay. So, and right now it's basically just, are you looking for frontage from him?
No, it would be from Carl Russo, I think his name is. And
Okay.
Because Mr. Arts has 175 feet of frontage right now, so he wouldn't have any extra to give.
Yeah.
Although Carl does have the extra frontage to give, so that's why we were kind of going down that path.
Okay. And obviously there's no house on there now. It's a beautiful piece of property.
Oh, thank you very much. Yeah, I farmed it for a few years, about 4 years. I farmed it. I had some pigs there, and it was a great piece of property for what I needed. But life's kind of changing, and it looks like Ron Hunt would be able to use the property more so than I can. So.
Any other commission member have any questions?
I do not.
I just ask a general question. So is the configuration of the lot now set up as a rear lot? Is that how it was laid out?
I'm not sure if I know the answer to that question. I'm not sure if I understand the question. I mean, right now, from what Russo has told me, that it's not a traditional rear lot because it has so much frontage. Most rear lots are like 30 feet of frontage, and then goes back and then opens up. Where this is pretty much it's very wide in the front, and then it widens out even more in the back. So it's not a typical rear lot, but it may be the only way that we could obtain a permit, I believe, from the looks of it, if we can't get the frontage from the neighbor, which doesn't look like that's going to happen. So it's
right. So that's what I'm thinking. If you just treated it as a lot plot, having excess footage shouldn't be a deterrent to that.
Okay.
Anyone else have any questions for David?
Hey, Joe?
Yes.
This piece of property, I don't know if you gentlemen have a map in front of you of any type.
We do.
Okay. I mean, there's almost 8 acres there. It's 7.98 acres. Not that I'm on the Planning and Zoning Commission, but there's plenty of room in the back if that's where they want to put the house.
That is where I do want to indeed put the house.
To meet all your side yard requirements and what have you and plantings. It's a shame that they can't get the frontage in the front, but and I'm only chiming in because I've known David Mosier most of his life, and I think that probably would be a reasonable request, in my opinion, for what it's worth.
I agree. I obviously have a rear lot and I only have 30 feet of frontage.
Thank you, Mr. Norton, for saying that. I appreciate it.
Well, he actually has 152 feet of frontage.
I know. I saw, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and where the house would be going, you know, really, you'd have no way of knowing that there's even a house back there if it wasn't for a driveway that he's going to have, because it's going to be, you know, where he wants to put it is so far back, you know, you'd never know.
Seems like the information that you've presented there's no obvious fatal flaws in your potential second course, your new course of action if you're unable to reach a deal with the abutter. It's an administrative process you have to go through. Unfortunately, it's going to cost a little extra money for the legal notice, the public hearing, so it takes time. You have to go through our regional planning agencies and get a referral. No, actually, I'm sorry, you do not need to do that. That's my mistake. There was another point I was going to make, and I just lost my train of thought. It'll come back.
Is there a, just so we could kind of, I could give Mr. Hunt an idea, or we could give Mr. Hunt an idea, what would be the earliest or an anticipated date that if we get the site plan from Russo completed, about how long could we expect it to kind of, the process to take?
Well, as a matter of process, we move the applications through the approval process as soon as humanly possible. As soon as all the information has been presented, all town comments have been addressed, we generally act on applications and approve them the same meeting. So I guess it all depends on the quality of the plans your engineer and our surveyor put together. If there's any outstanding staff comments, and those are resolved in a quick manner. Really, the approval process should be very, very simple. It's something that we could open a public hearing, close a public hearing, and approve it on the same night, provided that all the information is in order.
Okay.
David, is who's doing it with Russo? Who at Russo is doing it?
Ron, I think.
Jay Russo. Jay Russo is the one handling it for me.
Okay. Jay Ursery, yeah.
Go ahead and ask. Hey, Joe, just out of curiosity, would it be simpler to just go for a variance for the 22.5 feet roughly that he's short?
Good question. Good question.
Well, that's really out of this board's purview, and I guess it all comes down to, can you prove a hardship?
Joe, this is Jason. When I was on the phone with Dave and Ron and Ruben pointed out that is not a viable path because the hardship regulation requires satisfaction of like all 9 of the criteria that are outlined. It's not any of the 9, it's all of the 9.
Okay.
So if Jay completes the plans and we find that there's no wetlands and all that stuff, so everyone, this committee meets every 2 weeks, is that correct?
That's correct. The second and fourth Tuesday of every month.
Okay, so would it be a possibility that at the next meeting 2 weeks from now that this could be approved and that be able to move forward with the sale?
Well, there are some statutory requirements for public hearings that they have to be posted during a certain amount of calendar days. And I know there's the governor has issued some executive orders relaxing some of those requirements. What I really encourage you to do is make a phone call to Ruben in the Planning and Development Office and talk to him through the process to find out when the earliest possible date that the commission can actually consider an application. Okay. I'm not saying exactly that our next meeting is out of the question, but I don't know exactly how all the calendar days lay out regarding the public hearing notice and this and that. That's really the critical path.
Okay, thank you. So we'll wait for Jay, and then I'll talk to Ruben, and we'll come up with a plan.
Just a quick comment, if you have to do any postings with the neighbors, that's the other hang up. And I've noticed a lot of things in the mail are delayed, so.
Okay.
Now, this is Mr. Hunt. This is Mr. Hunt speaking. Just so you know, I did speak with one of the neighbors, which is, I believe her name was Jocelyn and William Arts. And they have no problem, or they're not objecting to me putting a house back there. The other gentleman to the opposite side of the property, Carl and Susan, they were okay with that as well. I don't know what other neighbors you'd want to contact. If there are any other neighbors, the neighbors across the street are actually looking forward to seeing somebody do something with the property.
So probably what would happen, Mr. Hunt, is during the public meeting, anybody who's within a certain radius of the property would have an opportunity to speak at a public hearing regarding what's being proposed on the property. So at that meeting, you might see some of your neighbors voicing an opinion, either supporting or having issues with the project. That's what would likely happen.
Right. Okay. Yeah. No, that's fine. I've been a lifelong resident of Windsor Locks, and it's a small town, and I'm tired of being on top of neighbors after neighbors. It's time that my kids are all grown and moved out, so it's just time to go out in the woods with my wife and just enjoy life and enjoy the nature out there. So that's what we're looking to do.
Thank you. I wish you well.
Thank you.
Okay. Guess we're going to move on to correspondence, and I'm not aware of any. Next up is our business meeting in general zoning issues. Lenny and
Wait.
Joe, Public Works.
Joe,
Anything?
I'm sorry, I'm trying to raise my hand, but my screen's not working.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't see it.
Yeah, you can't because I got this whole like fake background thing. So I just want, and this is a general zoning matter, but I just wanted to let the commission know that we're in the process of developing a developer's agreement that would be used for future subdivision use in town. That has been staffed out, and staff have submitted comments on it. My next step is to provide a fully redlined version of staff comments to the town attorney, and then when I get feedback from them, present it to you guys. That is something that we can be used moving forward, so that we don't find ourselves in circumstances like we have with a couple of subdivision developments on the hook for tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars in road improvements. But I just wanted to let you know that's something that's well into draft, and I'm hopeful that we'll have something back for you guys on the 23rd. That's the only thing I needed to share.
Thank you. Ruben, you have anything for tonight's meeting? Anything you want to talk about under the business meeting?
I have nothing. I mean, you signed up the MMCT zoning change, the Mylars, so that's ready to be recorded by the attorney. So that's all good to go. And as far as the gravel pit solar, it's an exciting project. It's going to remediate a whole bunch of problems. And I do have a little bit of renewable experience, so I can safely state that Aaron's team are top notch, and they're doing the right thing. And you guys are also doing right by the town in pursuing this diligently and responsibly. Not going crazy about all solar. not all solar is good. It needs to be the appropriate scale and concept, and Aaron's team was able to understand that from the get-go. Like my first conversation with him back in 2019 was about how solar fit in with the plan of conservation and development, and he immediately understood how to appropriately design and site the project. So I'm very happy that this is where it is right now. So.
Thanks, Ruben.
That's all I have.
Thank you. Public Works, Joe and Len, anything you want to add for tonight's business meeting?
You don't want to do your site?
I don't know if you want me to go over my site visits.
How about the ones that you just want to, maybe the ones that are not as elementary, any update? Because you did indicate that you might have some information for this meeting, seeing how some things progressed. We're willing to hear some stories, all stories, I guess.
Okay. Well, basically a quick overview is all the active big sites, Craftsman Road, North Road, West River Farms, and Jesse Lane, they're all complying. We have no issues out there. They're doing their best to keep up on all the erosion and everything. My site visits on all the pits, I had one complaint come in the last couple of weeks of a noise violation at the Wapping Road of the tailgate slamming when the trucks dump. So I did actually verify that they do make noise when they dump. And we had a complaint about them using Wapping Road again, and I stressed to the pit operations manager if they could stress to the drivers to maybe try to avoid Wapping Road as much as possible.
Are you Wapping or Morris?
Oh, I'm sorry, Morris. I'm sorry.
Yep. Okay, no problem.
So, I have no update on Harrington Road. I haven't received anything. Tomorrow is the deadline. And I've heard nothing other than he paid me a visit, and I instructed him what to do, and haven't heard anything since. And it appears that it's business as usual out there. Nothing from my North Road people also as far as cleaning up what they have. But excitingly enough, I spoke to a Cody Keeler today on our Pleasant Street father and son property, and they have been actively cleaning up. They got rid of all the unregistered vehicles. They're leasing some property behind them to have the grazing rights for the animals. I do need to do a little research because they're telling me that the pigs are indoor pigs, so they can have them. I'm not quite sure how to handle that yet. And they want to still house the animals on their property. And I tried to explain to him, of course, I don't have the backup. I need to research it, that you're not compliant if they're living on your property. So they have to all be moved to the leased property. And fortunate for us, it's an infield. So then it's their zoning problem. The only other thing, and I'll go quick, is I do have one issue. I maybe need some advice, and I asked our town electrician to look at this, and I know it's something that Ruben addressed in the past, but the people are coming back after us, is 45 Perry Lane has some extremely bright lights, and the neighbor next door is very upset with them, and I really don't know what I can do about it. Ruben looked into this back in October, and basically the only violation he found was the garage lights, and the people in the process put some LED bulbs in, but the town electrician went out there, and he says they're bright.
They're bright.
We don't have a residential lighting ordinance. We have a commercial one, but don't know how anything really applies to residential. And like I say, Ruben pretty much was happy with what it is, but the resident isn't happy. So
Yeah, it's extremely bright. I mean, it's the brightest lights I've seen in a long time in the residential house. Like I said, the commercial is no spillage over the property line, but I don't know about residential, like I said.
Joe, how do you feel about him?
I don't know if I have to recuse myself from this discussion. No, I'm not impacted in any way.
Okay.
I know of the lights. My question is, normally when there's a dispute between neighbors, they generally try to talk to each other to see if it could be resolved at the lowest possible level. And I'm wondering if the two neighbors have had any conversations.
They're not getting along by the feel that I'm getting.
Yeah, not surprising. I know one of them pretty well and the other one not well at all. But to your point, Joe, I'm not aware of any regulations regarding residential lighting.
Okay.
Oh,
Do we make one?
Well, I'm just thinking, what if somebody took this to an extreme and, pointed a couple million candle power directly at somebody's window next door? How would we handle something like that?
Wouldn't that be a police issue?
Again, what ordinance are you breaking, or what are you creating other than light spillage?
Yeah.
Harassment.
Yeah, I think that would probably a light issue, a police issue. I don't think you can shine your lights in somebody else's.
Well, again, so now it goes to, at what candle power does it become harassment versus, I don't know if that's the avenue you can approach, that if it's still offensive to somebody, would it be considered harassment?
This guy's property, Mike, is lit up like daylight at night. That's how much spillage is over in this guy's yard. I'd be mad if I was him too.
Yeah, well, not to defend either party, but he is actually, all the lights shine towards, he's 45. The big spotlights on the side shine towards 43. Oh, there's.
Yeah, look at that.
Thanks, Jay.
That's to me, somebody shining a light into my window.
Yeah, that's bright.
But Mike, the complainant lives to the right, not to the left.
Oh, okay.
So, and there's a pool and a spa out there, a hot tub.
That's got to be a 1,000-watt LED light out there, times 2.
That's just not being a good neighbor.
I guess I'd have to ask, are they motion security lights? Like if somebody triggers them if they move? Or is it all the time?
No, they're just floodlights that light up their backyard or their pool and their deck. And
that's a commercial wall pack. That's got to be. That's bright. That's a commercial light.
Do we know
I have a security light that comes on if there's motion in the backyard.
Look at the tree line. The tree line is lit up like daylight.
Yeah.
But again, I don't. Regardless of how it looks, we have no back on. I don't.
I question. Did anyone see if the homeowner took out a electrical permit for those lights?
No.
Rand has a file, but has been out on family business. So that's in process, but not completed.
But as a homeowner, you can do whatever you want in your own house. You should pull a permit, but he's allowed to do it under state of Connecticut law. You can do any kind of wire in your own house that you want. So all he has to do is pull a permit for $16. I don't think Rand can enforce anything.
Those lights that shown on the picture, I could see those from my yard.
Yeah.
And ironically, it doesn't bother me. It doesn't bother the other neighbor. And the complainant is to the right. I just don't understand what the issue is. But
You would think Mr. Kemet would have a big problem with it because they're shining light on the side of his house.
Yeah, Jason and I were having a conversation in my driveway 6 feet apart when Mr. Kemet was there, and we asked him about that, and it didn't seem to bother him.
So the issue that Joe's having from an enforcement perspective, and I'm having from my perspective as first selectman, is that I have a persistent complaint from a constituent, and we really need some guidance from this commission as to whether or not we have any venue to pursue the complaint here, or we just all acknowledge and agree that it's not being very neighborly, but the town doesn't have any teeth here. And really, we need you guys to tell us, go left or go right.
Seems to me you'd have to have a lighting ordinance.
Yeah, but you go down that road.
Otherwise, it's just a nuisance between the neighbors.
If you, impose,
go ahead, Mike.
If you, like I say, if you impose a lighting ordinance, then does that require everybody to do a photometric survey to verify that they're not in violation? You know, it becomes the slippery slope as to how do you verify, how do you prove?
Yeah, I'm not advocating for doing it. I'm just saying to have a violation, there has to be a ordinance.
Let me ask this. I mean, how different is that if the neighbor had an incessant barking dog all hours of the day up against the property line, just barking, barking, barking? What can you really do about that? There's no ordinance about barking dogs, is there? One barking dog?
It's a nuisance. You'd have to go to court over it.
Okay.
Between the individuals.
Okay, well, that's not an enforcement issue from the town or planning and zoning about barking dogs, is it?
We don't have a noise. We don't have a noise ordinance at all.
If I may interrupt here, what's in our prerogative to do anything? Isn't Ruben supposed to do all he can do? And if he can't do anything, we're just wasting our time.
Well, the question is, Frank, do we have authority here? And I'm not aware of any zoning regulation that any enforcement action that we can take on a residential piece of property.
Nor are you responsible to know that. I mean, that's not in our prerogative. We have a town planner, and if he can't do anything, it's up to him. I just think we're going round and round here for nothing.
Well, Joe, you had asked for advice from this commission, and unfortunately, I don't think there is a silver bullet here that's going to solve the problem.
I don't think we can give them any advice because we don't know.
Okay, well, thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate that too, guys.
I use you all for a sounding board, and you have been very, very helpful.
Unfortunately, Joe, that's just one neighbor to another. They're going to have to solve it between themselves.
One piece of advice I do have as to, I mean, I don't think this is going to go away anytime soon, but you can send out, or you can ask Ruben to send out on the planning listserv any comparable communities that have lighting ordinances on residential properties, just to see what's out there, see what other communities are doing. And as a benchmark, if none of the 169 towns have this in Connecticut, it's a non-issue. I mean, it's between two property owners. But there may be a lot of towns, there may be some towns that have nuisance complaints, and as a result have established or created zoning regulations to kind of establish baselines, if you will.
Joe, I know Tallinn definitely has one for lighting.
Yeah, Joe, I'm aware of it in the West because they don't want to interfere with their vision of the stars. So there's a lot of areas in the Western US that have lighting requirements.
There's dark skies compliance regulations that apply, yeah.
Is there anything in the original approval, or was there anything in the original approval for this subdivision? Has anyone looked at that?
I don't believe we have looked at that.
it's Len says it's highly unlikely, and honestly, I live in the same subdivision, and you know, there's no. I mean, there's no other issues there. You know,
Yeah,
we've got
whoever said that you could, all you do to put in a light is take out a building permit, and I didn't find the building permit process said I couldn't put in a light in my backyard.
right. I mean, I have a pool in my backyard, and when we're out there at night, it's nice to have it very bright and then turn it off. But fortunately, mine go down towards
Towards the
back.
pole.
Not against somebody else's house, but
Yeah, mine is for if there was somebody prowling around out there, it comes on.
well, other than that, everything else is pretty much status quo. I won't bother you with the other little stuff I'm handling. I'm good.
Thank you for the update. We really appreciate your effort.
Thank you, Joe. Doing a hell of a job. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Joe.
Is there anything else under the business meeting for the good of the order from any other commission members?
I don't have anything.
I'm all set.
Well, I'm not hearing anything. So with that, is there a motion to adjourn?
Make a motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? A hand? Good
Aye.
night.
Aye.
Thank you, everyone. Great meeting.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night now.
Good night.